Thank you. This is my first trip to Austin, so it's a big event for me. Never been to Austin, Texas. We're listening to some music by a friend of mine. His name is Stephen Halpern, and if you've ever had a massage, most likely you've heard Stephen's music. He's known as the Grand Master of sound healing music. He started decades ago, and this is his album, Deep Alpha. It was just nominated for a Grammy, and as a matter of fact, here we have Stephen at the Grammys, and he is a #1 best-selling composer, recording artist, and researcher. His music, you will notice, doesn't have a beat. And Stephen says that if you are listening to a beat, the beat begins to entrain your heart, and you begin to expect what's coming next. And if there's no beat, you just go on and on and on and float into deep relaxation. He calls this particular CD Deep Alpha, and when we are in Deep Alpha, which is 8 cycles per second, this relieves stress, it boosts our immune system, it accentuates our concentration and focus. And so anyway, thanks to Stephen for starting us off here. We're going all around with sound tonight, and I'm very passionate about sound, so we'll start in the beginning. And most cultures share myths of creation of some sonorous event. And many of you who are familiar with the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. In the Vedas, which are over 11,000 years old, handed down from sage to student to and then becoming a sage and then student, etc., they begin with the sound of Brahma. Brahma rises in the ocean of consciousness on a lotus, and the primordial sound is Om. Here spelled A-U-M. A representing the waking state, U the dream state, and M the deep sleep state. And when we tone Om, this helps to connect both halves of our brains, connect the whole endocrine system, and opens that channel to the divine, where all of this energy cascades down. If you're familiar with the chakra system, all the spiritual centers that are associated with the endocrine system. So I thought tonight we would start with a little bit of oming. They talked a few moments ago about oming in the dome. How many of you have not had the experience of oming? Is there anyone who's never ohmed? Then we have some real practice omers here. So this is going to be a great exercise, and everybody's going to have this full blossoming experience of Om. What I'd like you to do is take a deep breath, close your eyes, and then we'll Om 3 times. And if you were ever told as a child not to sing so loud, that maybe you were singing off key, that doesn't count here. We do not care if you can carry a tune or not. We just want you to sound, to center in your heart and say Om. And we're going to just go for 3 times, okay? So close your eyes, take a deep breath, exhale, and on your next inhale, and exhale, wonderful. Thank you. Deep oming connects the right hemisphere with the left hemisphere, It neutralizes the nervous system. It sparks the music of the spheres. And because of our great space program, we've been able to hear the sounds of the planets oscillating at their own vibration in space. And we can't really see sound. We see the glyph of Om there, and on your right, or excuse me, your left, you see the artist's rendition of the vibration of Om and the color of Om. And on your right, you see someone who's taken a sculpture and tried to make a 3D expression of Om. And here we have a cymatic image of Om. And you can actually watch this in vibratory existence through the science of cymatics. And cymatics is the science of making sound visible. Cymatics is comes from the Greek word chyma, which means wave, and it was coined by a Swiss medical doctor, Dr. Hans Jenny, and he lived from 1904 to 1972. He's a Swiss medical doctor and natural scientist. And here you see Dr. Jenny, and you see on his, with Dr. Jenny, right here you see the little plate, and underneath this plate is a transducer. On top of the plate, he would place different mediums like sand or different powders, like a podium powder was a really great one. And he would set it for different frequencies, and through those different frequency expressions, the amplitudes, different frequencies, you would get these beautiful geometric shapes. And doesn't this one look just like a spine? And this one is actually turpentine, which comes from the pine cone. It looks just like a pine cone. Dr. Jenny's work is captured in this incredible DVD. If you are interested in sound at all, this DVD is a must for your library. It's titled Of Sound, Mind, and Body. It was produced by Jeff Volk at cymaticssource.com, and it was the winner of the Hartley Film Award through the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And it is just a beautiful compendium of all types of sound therapies that are out available in the world today. And there's a large collection of Dr. Jenny's footage of making sound visible. From the beginning of time, really, we've had evidence of frozen sound. Here we have Egyptian and Roman columns where there are expressions of vibratory signatures in these columns. And also from 4000 BC, we see where the three most powerful energies in the universe are marked as very powerful when they're harnessed together. These temples, healing temples, using the principles of sound, light, and magnetics, were built on magnetic vortexes and captured the sunlight with this particular architecture and the reverberation of the sound for healing. In the Vedas, we talked about that just a little bit earlier, from over 11,000 BC, a part of the Vedas called the Vastu Shastra. And this is the holy architecture to capture the most pure sound and harmony that we can experience in the world. And so you see the outer structure, the beautiful cone shapes, and inside you see these beautiful arcs, and in the circle standing, if you've ever been in a Vedic temple like this, you can stand in the center and you just feel every cell within you, the vibration is realigning your whole body, mind, and spirit. This tradition was carried all throughout the years, the decades, the centuries. And here we have Chartres Cathedral. This is sort of how I grew up, and I first got involved in sound as a child. I grew up in the Catholic Church and a Gothic style cathedral. And here you see the buttresses that would harness the different parts of sound. And as you would, if has anyone here been to Chartres? cathedral. So as you walk through, here we have the amazing labyrinth, walking the labyrinth that helps to adjust the right and the left hemisphere, bring the autonomic nervous system into an incredible balance. And as you walk through down the aisle of these Gothic cathedrals, you experience different types of sound reverberating within your body, and a lot of times these are corresponding with the chakra system, so that when you get up here to the altar, which is associated with the brow chakra, you are actually having an altered experience of the divine. So sound is just captured in these architectures all throughout history. This is the Roslin Chapel in Edinburgh, Scotland, and this chapel was made very famous by Dan Brown, if you ever read the Da Vinci Code. And it is a chapel from the 1500s. In this chapel there are cubes engraved in the architecture of musical notation, and these were decoded just a few years ago by a father and son team, and it's called the Roslin Motet. So you can actually go online and order how they took these frozen sound images and corresponding them to the musical, and it's just a beautiful, sounds like 15th century music. And in the chapel itself is just beautiful. You look up to the ceiling, it looks like the roof of a mouth, and all the echoes and the sound that comes through the reverberation there. The Asclepian temples, again, built on magnetic vortexes, capturing sound and light. And people, someone was telling me earlier, they're part of the Jungian Society, and how people would make pilgrimages once, twice, sometimes 4, 5, 6 times a year, and spend the night in these temples with priests and priestesses that would in the morning take dictation of what your experience was, what was your dream state, and help you in the process of healing and vibrationally. Dr. Mitchell Gaynor, an oncologist in New York, the author of The Healing Power of Sound, was gifted one day by a Tibetan monk a Tibetan bowl. Now, Dr. Gaynor, as a assistance to his patients recovering from cancer, would lead guided meditations, and we all know how powerful the mind is. Guided meditations were helping his patients to recover from their bouts with cancer through the pain and the emotional and the physical pain. By combining the Tibetan bowl with the guided meditation, what normally took 2 years, he accomplished in just 2 sessions. This is the power of sound. Sound has the ability to bypass our emotions, has the ability to bypass the subconscious and go into the core of what the real healing state, the healing that is needed at the core level. If you're not familiar with Tibetan bowls, they're made with metal, usually by Tibetan monks, and they produce hemisync type frequencies that create binaural beats in the brain. And the quartz crystal bowls produce a neuroimmune response, and they correspond with the crystalline properties in our blood. And Dr. Gaynor today, when you go into his office, he has a row of Tibetan bowls and a row of crystal bowls, and he invites the patient to select the bowl for them. And of course, each person is drawn intuitively to the sound that is appropriate for them. Alexander Lauterwasser is a contemporary researcher of the cymatic experiments, and this beautiful book was translated into English and is also available at Macromedia Publishing, cymaticsource.com. And he does all of his cymatic work in water, and so we'll see a brief video here about Alexander.
Alexander Lauterwasser is a photographer who makes captivating images of water under the influence of sound vibrations. As a child, Alexander raised tortoises at home in Heiligenberg, Germany. He came across illustrations of Chladni sound figures that bore a striking resemblance to a tortoise shell.
Die, das war das Überraschende für mich, sehr enge Verwandtschaft haben mit Strukturen in der Natur und besonders hier mit dem Schildkrötenpanzer.
Chladni figures are named after Ernst Chladni, an 18th century musician and physicist. He spread sand on metal plates and played them with a violin bow. The vibrations from the bow caused the sand to gather into beautiful geometric forms. Next, Alexander discovered the research of Hans Jenny, a Swiss physician, who took up and expanded on Chladni's work in the 1960s using fluid mediums and electronic amplification of sound. Jenny coined the term Cymatics, from the Greek for wave, for this branch of study. Today, Alexander Lauterwasser is building on the work of his predecessors, employing modern sound and recording equipment. He has custom-built devices which allow him to stimulate various materials, such as sand or water, with sound vibrations whose frequencies can be precisely controlled.
Um das Ganze auch dokumentieren zu können und festhalten zu können, wird es hier mit einer Videokamera gefilmt. Wenn das alles richtig eingerichtet ist, gehe ich an den Frequenzgenerator, beginne mit einer relativ tiefen Frequenz.
The sand is pushed from areas where the vibration is strongest and collects where it is the weakest, forming patterns that correspond to the particular tone that is applied to the plate. The higher the frequency applied, the more complex and detailed is the pattern that results. Under controlled conditions, these forms are repeatable.
Isn't that amazing? Sound creating form look just like the tortoise shell, and that's not the only example. I invite you to visit my website, cymatechnologies.com, or cymaticsource.com, which is Jeff Volk's website. He's the person who had all of Dr. Jenny's work translated into English. The Cymatics book is, again, another really wonderful book to have in your library. Dr. Jenny is a very spiritual, natural scientist, and also the work of Alexander Lauterwasser. There's another contemporary researcher, John Reed, who's out of the UK, and he has the Cymoscope. He also has some really fascinating footage. If you just go to YouTube and Google cymatic experiments, you'll see some amazing cymoglyphs. And here we have Alexander Lauterwasser. The center image is a five-shaped image in water. And if you think about everything that we have in nature, we have so many things that represent five. And these flowers are just a couple of them that you can see. And then I think this is really amazing of our DNA. Our DNA reveals a cross-section of 10 decagon sets. So it's five. We have five even at the base pairs of our DNA. What we're looking for is to live in this symphonic harmony in our world. And here we have a cell that's all blossoming in just its radiant beauty of color and vibration. And what happens when we're under cellular stress, you see we have a few little cells that are singing right along, but we have some of them over to the side that have kind of gotten out of tune. Their vibratory rate is falling off. And here we have a section of the symphony that seems to have gotten way off key. And I think a lot of you can relate to this if you've ever had an injury or some type of illness. Seems like that group of cells just kind of gets off tune and they start singing their own song, which is not the song of harmony. So what happens, the rest of the body tries to accommodate and see if there's some type of harmonic that they can arrange. Sound in today's medicine is not new. In Smithsonian Magazine in 2004, there's a scientist at UCLA, Jim Jimzewski, and he termed the branch of study that was hearing the cell as sonocytology. And just a few years later, we have out of the University of Missouri a biological engineering team that created a photoacoustic device, and they can hear as few as 10 melanoma cells in a blood sample. And at Duke University, just the past couple of years, we have Kathy Nightingale, who's the Associate Professor of Biological Engineering, is detecting disease with sound. And she talks about in her research that the muscles have their own particular sound. The blood, every part of the body has its own song. And using sound therapeutically and diagnostically in today's medicine is becoming very popular. We've heard of diagnostic ultrasound. We have mothers, that is the most popular one that people think of. Young mothers getting ultrasounds of the babies in the womb. We also use ultrasound for pain relief and to remove tumors. Something called lithotripsy, which pulverizes kidney and gallstones. And some of your dentists may be using sonic scaling on you. So again, we have this cellular symphony, and it's kind of like a symphony orchestra, and the violin section loses their music. And so what happens is the rest of the orchestra is trying to figure out, how do we compensate for that part of the body being out of tune. So what we're looking for is a conductor to sound the pitch pipe. How do we get these cells all back into singing in harmony again? Albert Einstein said, everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality that you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy, this is physics. So here we have Dr. Peter Guy Manners, who was doing research around the time of Dr. Yenny, and he was researching different biosignatures of the body, vibratory rates of the cellular structures of all the different types of systems, the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the digestive system, the endocrine system. And in tribute to Dr. Yenny, he named his therapy, once he found these signatures that people were responding to, he named, out of tribute to Dr. Yenny, his therapy, cymatic therapy. And here we have a cymatic expression of cell regeneration. Wouldn't it be great if you could just flip a switch and your body be regenerated with sound in a non-invasive way to regenerate the cells? So this is sound made visible, and it's at a very low, almost inaudible rate. And look at that, a dynamic expression compared to the surface cells. And you can see, them matching up nicely. So again, Dr. Manners created this whole system of 700 plus harmonic codes, and they all have 5 frequencies in them. So these 5 frequencies that we're seeing expressed here with cell regeneration are creating harmonics and subharmonics in the body. And again, we have the vibratory patterns of 5 in nature with these beautiful flowers. And if you've studied the Fibonacci series, we probably remember that from grade school, right? And that is expressed all throughout life, throughout nature. And we are humans living in this natural world, and we want to live in harmony. So what do we do when we have a big ouch? Well, maybe we could look at sound to make that big red spot go away. And with the technology of Dr. Manners, we were very successful in doing that in just 20 minutes. So right now I'm going to take you through a few slides that show you that sound in fact does heal. Audible sound. You could have your Tibetan bowl, you could have your quartz crystal bowl, your tuning forks, and any wonderful melodious voice coming from your lips. Sound does heal. These particular slides that I'm showing you, the sound regenerating the tissue came from Dr. Manners' work that we carry on at Cymatics. This is a picture of a racehorse. This is an ultrasound, and you probably know a lot of racehorses in your life. We have weekend warriors that, or I know I have many friends who do triathlons and marathons and 5Ks and whatever, and we're just known to overdo all the time. Even when we feel great, we somehow or another push ourselves across that little edge and we come up with a little tear like this. Well, it's the same way with these thoroughbred racehorses. They have these little tears. The unfortunate thing about the racehorses is that it is a business, and the owners normally just rest the horse for a short period of time, and then they need to get the horse out there running again. So what happens when we re-injure ourselves? That part of the body tears again, and so the body's natural band-aid is scar tissue and adhesion. So it makes a little knit there. It says, we're not going to let this happen again. And it's the same with these race horses. So this horse, you'll see the name of the horse at the very top is Rarely Found. And it is a commonly found injury. This torn tendon, you can see with the red circle there at the top, is a 30% tear, and 6 weeks later you can see that it doesn't look like it's there at all. And you might say to yourself, well, gee, if I rested for 6 weeks, which they don't allow these horses to rest for 6 weeks, but if I rested for 6 weeks, my tendon, it might be pretty good there. The amazing thing is that there's no scar tissue or adhesions. The tissue is totally regenerated like there is never an injury before. So we had some really great success with a lot of racehorses because it is such a common injury with that particular 25 to 35% tears. Then we had the big guy. The Frack is his name, and he had a 95% tear. They actually had to come on to the racetrack and carry him off with an ambulance. And 6 weeks later, we have this beautiful tissue that has regenerated, and they wanted to put this horse down, and we're happy to say that he's running again and winning. And this is the ultrasounds from a different perspective. We just couldn't believe it, that it was so good. And here we have stiff, gnarly joints. I know I've had some problems with this myself. And the condition here that is being was diagnosed with this woman. This is a 72-year-old woman. She has something called Dupuytren's. But we all have, nodules that kind of come up. This is a fascia cord. If you look here, you can see there's no nutrient-rich oxygenated blood getting into that area. She can't straighten out her hand, her fingers there. And you see that she's a pain level of a 7 on a scale of 10, so she couldn't sleep through this pain. Many times she had to have some assistance in getting sleep. And we all know how cranky we get when we're not sleeping, right? So here we have after 6 sessions. It's very nice regeneration there. We've had some great results with, this is a gentleman that was diagnosed with emphysema and was on a lung transplant list, and so we're investigating this more thoroughly because now he's doing really well, no longer on the lung transplant list. And this is another condition, a lung condition called pulmonary fibrosis. So what we're seeing here in the lung area is not a lot of activity. And so right after a session with the Cyma codes, we see some increased flow. If we're not getting oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood through all parts of our body, we need some help. And so that's the case with that. Here we have a study on peripheral vascular disease. Sometimes as we get a little older, our blood pools in the lower extremities, and it gets a little out of hand. And so we've had a study at BEMS published and presented. And so here we have, with the gift of thermography, which allows us to see the vascular activity in the body. Whoops, come back here. We can see the before, the after 20 minutes, and actually 25 hours later, the sound is still, where the body's receiving the therapeutic effects of the sound in the body. And that particular device that was used there is the AMI 750. It's been nominated for an Edison Award, and so we're really excited about that in the field of science and medicine. And you are welcome to try this. We have a few of the units with us tonight, so if you'd like to experience the AMI 750, we have some 10-minute programs that you could get a little taste of what vibrational sound feels like. And all you do is you sit comfortably in a chair with your feet resting, and the sound travels up through the soles of the feet. We have a lot of practitioners that use it in their clinics. We are so happy that we can help small children too, and have had some great success with the field of autism. This little boy was 5 years old and did not speak, and after his 7th session began to speak. And here we show that it's actually affecting tissue up into the torso area, the sound being applied through the bottom of the feet. This is, if you're familiar with the acupuncture meridians or Chinese medicine, where the rivers run, the energy system runs through the body. This is actually through the feet, affecting all the way up the torso. We've had some great results with pain in a short period of time. We've had some great results with detoxification and weight loss. And again, we welcome you to try it today while we're here. Jan is here in Texas, and she shared with you a little earlier about our meeting at the Science and Consciousness Conference some years ago. And actually how I became involved with Cyma therapy was I met Dr. Peter Guy Manners in 2001, and he was having some challenges with getting his devices manufactured, and so I have the availability to help with that, and so we partnered, and Dr. Manners passed away in 2009, and so Cyma Technologies carries on his work. And we're really excited that Jan is here in Austin, so if you'd like to have some special sessions after we leave today, Jan's the person to help you out with that. And we have a lot of research that continues. We're doing some work actually tomorrow in San Antonio with some veterans with post-traumatic stress, and we do have a few other studies in great Alzheimer's study that really fantastic results with that, so stay tuned. There is a book by Dr. Anthony Fleming and Elizabeth Bauer called Inside the Photon, A Journey to Health, just recently came out. And this is a phenomenal book. If you are interested in the science of vibrational healing, you will want this book. It is not your light reading book. It is a very meaty text. And every year, as Jan announced, we have the Cymatics conference in Atlanta, and this is where people who are doing research on sound, in particular, they present their case studies or sometimes their group studies, large group studies, and we invite you to come this year. It's October 11th through the 13th. It's fun. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do yourself with sound. We talked about ohming, and I hope that you will go to the Dome and ohm. And you can sing in the shower and do so many things. You can flip the switch and have the ease of the AMI 750 or the AMI 1000. But there's really more that you can do. And I like this story about the Buddha. A Brahmin priest saw the Buddha resting under a tree in meditation. And the Brahmin was impressed with the Buddha's way. And he asked, "Are you a god?" And Buddha said, "No, Brahmin, I am not a god." "Are you an angel?" "No," replied the Buddha. "You must be a spirit then." "No, I'm not a spirit," said the Buddha. "Then what are you?" "I'm awake." So being awake, being aware, a dear friend of mine says there's no substitute for awareness, and that's what we want to do. We want to be aware of sound everywhere in our environment. There's a wonderful physician, Dr. Cymatics. You may be familiar with him or have heard of Cymatics centers. There are quite a few of them here in the United States. He's a French physician. And he termed two sounds that discharge our energy, sounds that make us tired and fatigued and make us feel like, oh gosh, I just don't think I can carry on. And then sounds that give us energy. If you've ever heard the story, this is his story about in the mid to late 60s, there was a monastery in the south of France. And a new abbot came. If you're familiar with Catholicism, in the early to mid 60s, they had Vatican II, and they said, made a lot of different changes. They took Latin out of the Mass, and they said, we want people to understand, so we change it all to English. And there was a monastery in the south of France, and a young abbot came and took over, and he noticed that the monks were doing all this chanting, this Gregorian chant. And he said, well, this is not the way anymore. We could be using these hours that you're spending chanting with making more bread, more wine to sell to the community. And so we're going to cut out the chanting and work more. Well, it wasn't long before the monks were sleeping, sloughing in their cells. And so a lot of physicians were called in. One physician said, well, the problem is because they're vegetarian. They're not getting enough protein. Of course, this line of monks had been vegetarian for centuries. And so anyway, finally, nothing was happening. They were all just slumping in their cells, not having any energy. Dr. Cymatics was called in, and he asked the patient history, like what was going on, when did this begin to happen. So he asked if for 90 days they could reinstitute the chanting, the Gregorian chant, for so many hours throughout the day. And they did, and it wasn't long before the monks were back in full swing. So according to Dr. Cymatics, Gregorian chant is fantastic energy food. And so I invite you to try this. Get a CD of some really good Gregorian chant, and the next time you're feeling a little, like you need a little pick-me-up, try some of that Gregorian chant. Or if you're really keyed up and you just want to level off, Gregorian chant is a phenomenal expression of music that, again, helps to normalize the autonomic nervous system and brings you in some really great harmony. It wasn't only Gregorian chant that he found that helped everyone all throughout the world, but it was also the music of Mozart. In certain parts of the world, he found that some of the culture, the music of that culture, people would respond. But all over the world, he found Gregorian chant and the music of Mozart. You may be familiar with Dr. Emoto's work, Messages from Water, and this is really important with sound because our bodies are 70 or more % water. And his work shows us how we can harness all of these great, wonderful vibrations, the music, our thoughts, and how to express into beauty and harmony. This is just exquisite of Sanskrit prayer words. And if you've never chanted Sanskrit, just go somewhere to some temple, wherever it might be, and have them give you a piece of Sanskrit and chant along with them, even if it's just one line. Chanting Sanskrit is, they call it the mother of all languages. It actually makes your tongue tap different parts of the roof of your mouth and along the gum line. It's like a computer. And it activates your hypothalamus, it activates, it's just a wonderful, great high. Next to Gregorian chant, try Sanskrit chant. Bach. This is the music, this is the water crystal exposed to Bach music. And Beethoven, is that not just exquisite? And this is water exposed to heavy metal music. So it makes you think that, wow, next time I go into a store, I know I have left stores that have had this racket because I just can't even think straight. I forgot why I came into the store, or I can't make a decision. It's really interesting. In the book, Messages from Water, a mother and her son captured these photographs. It was a science experiment. The mother made a batch of rice. She divided it into 2 jars. For 30 days, the child told the jar on the left, "You fool." And 30 days on the right said to that jar, "I love you." And at the end of the 30 days, you can see very well the effects of this. Our words are so powerful, our intention. And the jar on the left was decaying and had not a very good aroma, and the jar on the right was actually somewhat fragrant. And then we've heard the story of the little angry boy, the little boy that was so angry with the whole world that everything he said that came out of his mouth was hurtful. One day his father gets a hold of him and realizes that they've got to curtail this in some way. And so they tell him that for every hurtful thing, he has to go out to the back and hammer in a nail. And the first day, he had driven in 37 nails. Now, this is a lot of work for a small child, but just the anger going out there. After a while, it made him think about what he was saying, and they dwindled down. Then he got to the point where he was saying nice things. And then his parents said, maybe you might want to apologize to all the people that you said hurtful things to. So every apology, he took a nail out. And in the end, when the fence had all the nails out, his father said, "You've done a really great job, but look at the fence. The fence will never be the same." When you say things in anger, they leave a scar, just like the scars on the fence. And so it doesn't matter how many times you say you're sorry, the wound is still there. And I know this is a child's lesson, but I know as attentive as I am to sound and vibration and the thoughts that I think, I many times have to catch myself on what am I saying? What am I, is this causing any harm anywhere? Dr. David Hawkins, in his book Power versus Force, rates different states of consciousness. And of course, the enlightenment of 700 to 1,000, peace 600, joy 540, love 500. And going down, if you look to the right side of the screen, you'll see that below 200 is below the critical level of integrity. And so we get down into pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt. Lowering the vibration is what those feelings do. And as we are emotional beings, it's really important for us to keep the vibration high. How do we stay up there? And I know that a lot of you have probably heard about anger being just one letter away from danger, and people who are angry having different types of medical conditions. And so to raise, if we can raise that vibratory rate up to 500 or more, one way to raise our vibratory rate is through laughter. And this has actually been proven by Norman Cousins. If you've ever heard of his book, Anatomy of an Illness. He was stricken with a terrible condition. His doctors told him to get his affairs in order, etc. He went and rented movies of Charlie Chaplin, etc., and laughed himself to health. And so that will raise your vibratory rate, starting with laughter. And so here we have an opportunity for a little laughter. We all know what happens when we type the wrong email address, right? It goes somewhere else into cyberspace. So here's a fun little story. A Minneapolis couple decided to go to Florida to thaw out during a particularly icy winter. They planned to stay at the same hotel where they spent their honeymoon 20 years earlier. Because of hectic schedules, it was difficult to coordinate their travel schedules. So the husband left Minnesota and flew to Florida on Thursday, with his wife flying down the following day. The husband checked into the hotel. There was a computer in his room, so he decided to send an email to his wife. However, he accidentally left out one letter in her email address, and without realizing his error, sent the email. Meanwhile, somewhere in Houston, a widow had just returned home from her husband's funeral. He was a minister who was called home to glory following a heart attack. The widow decided to check her email, expecting messages from relatives and friends. After reading the first message, she screamed and fainted. The widow's son rushed into the room, found his mother on the floor, and saw the computer screen which said, "To my loving wife, I've arrived." I know you're surprised to hear from me. They have computers here now, and you're allowed to send emails to the ones you love. I've just arrived and have been checked in. I see that everything has been prepared for your arrival tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you then. Hope your journey is as uneventful as mine was. That's a good one. Another way to raise your vibrational level is to listen to beautiful music. And we talked about the expression in Messages from Water with listening to Beethoven and Bach and Sanskrit chanting. There are so many things. I am the founder and board chair of the International Sound Therapy Association, and I do present on behalf of the International Sound Therapy Association throughout the world. We have a wonderful CD. So if you don't have a CD of gongs, bells, and bowls, I ask you to visit our website at powerofsounds.org and order up a GB2, Gongs, Bells, and Bowls. It's a wonderful, instrumental, very relaxing CD, and it goes to our nonprofit organization. So you can change your world with the healing power of sounds. We talked about submerging yourself in a beautiful architecture, so the next time you're in a Gothic cathedral or you're in a Vedic temple, go into that sweet spot and you will be able to feel. Just close your eyes, center in your heart, and you will feel your cells realigned with that sacred architecture. The sounds, just say a whisper and hear your voice bounce back and forth. It's just very healing to hear your own voice, and that's why toning, oming in the dome, will be really good. We talked about the CDs, the Power of Sound CD, and Stephen Halpern has some wonderful music. There are so many great musicians who tap into the healing resonance of your voice, of different types of music. We talked about Tibetan bowls. Tibetan bowls, if you do not own one, try one the next time you're in your metaphysical bookstore or music store. And
I've got Tibetan bowls also.
okay. See, Jan? You can flip the switch and try an AMI 750. You can visualize this beautiful, beautiful gem all throughout your body, every cell. We are 70% plus water, and imagine all of your cells filled with this beautiful love vibration. And so in closing, I'd like to say, may every word you speak be gentle. May every thought you think harmonious. May all your songs be of honey, and every step a continuing dance of love. So thank you for allowing me to share with you tonight.